Hello. Welcome to Vinyl Junkies versus Vinyl Me Please, round 4, aka What's in Your Cart. We're going to be speaking to Matt, who you can see right there. Say hello, Matt.
Hey y'all, what's up?
We're going to be doing our $100 shopping cart that's so fun. You were saying to me off air that you had a little bit of trouble finding your, getting your $100. Why is that?
I just couldn't make the math work. There were a bunch of titles that I was into, and I was trying to figure out. Well, one, a lot of the stuff that I really like in the store this month kind of falls all into this like kind of more jazz blues spectrum,
Lots
and
of jazz, yeah.
I love those records, but like it hasn't been lining up with my mood. There was just a few things that I wanted. I've been working a ton and trying to start all those healthy New Year's practices and going to the gym and walking the dog. And I've been craving like a little more aggressive music. So, well,
Craving a
on the
little
one
bit of
hand,
attention too, eh?
maybe,
I'm noticing you're
but
there wearing the tight shirt with the fucking buzz cut happening.
that's just how I'm built, man. I don't
Oh,
know what to tell you. I'm
oh, I see.
just repping Beyonce.
It's just you were born naturally born musculature, is what you're saying.
If you look at my grandpa, he's just one of those barrel-chested guys. He ran a sawmill,
He's
and
Popeye.
yeah, he's total Popeye. He's got little tiny stick legs, and you could barely get your arms around him when you tried to hug him.
Yeah, and I've seen pictures of you with a pipe. That's pretty cool. So you're Popeye too, and Thor, and so many other
Hey,
things. So you were trying to say you were saying you were trying to get 5 records in, right? And were you able to get your 5 records in for a
uh,
$100 or not?
nope. I had to make a hard stop at 4 records, and I think I only spent like 90 or 92 bucks
You
doing
left
it.
something
But
on the table.
there's so much stuff to leave on the table. It was tough. I mean, I would love. I have no Sun Ra in my collection, for
Ooh,
example, and like to not get that record is tough, but I think it was 27 or 29 bucks, and I
it
just
is.
couldn't make the math work. So
And the thing
I
is
like
that
that about like our little game of trying to do this is just you got to say no to something.
well, the bad news. Well, no, actually, bad news. What it is that you're missing out on is that the Sun Ra that's coming out there is released by UK label that really specializes in Sun Ra releases. So it's going to be good. They've been doing it for a while. The good news, on the other hand, is that you're going to get a lot more kicks at the can where it comes to Sun Ra because there's a whole boatload of it going to be coming out in 2018. I know Org Music is releasing some.
Nice.
I believe Sundays or Modern Harmonic is releasing some, and a few other labels. So we're going to be seeing a lot of Sun Ra pretty soon.
What do you think's driving that? Is there an anniversary of his death or something significant in his career? Was
There,
there anything that
there's been
like
a
is
whole
triggering?
there's been a whole bunch of fighting and pirating when it comes to Sun Ra's catalog. A lot of the
Uh,
stuff has been released without the musicians actually getting any compensation, and the legal waters are a bit murky because um, it was a commune.
yeah,
Sun Ra treated his musicians like his family, and it was a traveling commune, right? So everything belonged to everybody. And of course, that makes things really complicated. I know that a lot of these guys still live together. I believe in Philadelphia is one member
crazy.
who's maybe 94 years old.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, you know. And a lot of this stuff was basically released without anybody getting paid, or the people who were being paid rights on that catalog were like lawyers and stuff, people who just sat on the trademark. So
That
now
sucks.
there's a little bit of a push to get the musicians paid and to get the rights to that music going to the people who rightfully own it and the people who actually made it, you know. So
Nice.
sorry,
I mean,
the answer was a
that
little long, but that's the
no,
answer.
no, but that's great. I mean, if it's resurging so that people can actually get the record and the artist can get paid, that seems like best case scenario, right?
Well, what I like about these types of things is that the music is celebrated. It's not just the music; it's the spirit of the music that's celebrated in the purest and in the purest way possible, and in the way that the artist actually meant it. What I mean is, take a piece of classical music, right? Take a Beethoven, take Stravinsky. Okay,
Yeah.
you'll have a different conductor, and you'll have a different soloist, and you'll have a different orchestra, and you'll have a whole bunch of things, right? But the piece remains what the piece is, you know? So a Beethoven is celebrated as a composer, right?
Right.
A lot of this is beginning to happen. I mean, doesn't have the history that classical does, but we're seeing a lot of it with jazz as well. Okay, and Sun Ra really does fit that. So a lot of the times you'll still see Sun Ra's long dead, but you'll see a lot of concerts being performed by the Sun Ra Orchestra. Why? Because the orchestra was this big community thing, and it lives past the being of Sun Ra, who probably believed, I mean, the guy changed his story so many times, but the guy probably believed he's he's on Venus right now, type of thing.
Yeah.
Weird cat.
And what era were they all getting together like that, like the band and the artists? I mean, was that late 60s? Is this like jazz meets kind of hippie movement?
A lot of the early Sun Ra, the thing is Sun Ra goes everywhere, okay? Frank Zappa, man, it reminds me a lot of Frank Zappa. When you think of geniuses, these are the guys, you know? And the earlier Sun Ra tends to kind of follow a more Duke Ellington type of jazz pattern. Okay, so you'll see a lot more big band and that type of thing, but odd chord structures. There's always something a little odd about Sun Ra. Then all of a sudden, 60s not communism, but communalism begins happening. Yep. People live in communes, flower power, anti-Vietnam, this whole thing, drugs. That whole commune thing made it so that the music changed. For example, during that time, there's a book called Space and the Place by John Zwed, who also wrote a biography on Miles Davis. But at one point, Sun Ra they were making all of their own records. So if you see El Saturn records, those are records actually made by those guys with handmade art. But
that's crazy.
Oh yeah. They're worth a fortune, and they sell for a fortune, and they're extremely highly sought after. There's like hundreds of them, Sure. But I know that I just missed my point. Look, Sun Ra was an interesting cat. Yeah, that's the point I wanted to make. By the time the 60s came around, music got a very, very percussive. Actually, I guess once Dizzy Gillespie brought in, the Afro-Cuban thing, it started getting a lot more percussive. And at one point, it was understood that everybody, and sometimes there were 25 musicians on stage, everybody on stage necessarily played percussion. That was the one instrument everybody had in common. It was like eating and breathing. You play a percussion instrument.
Huh.
Yeah.
This is why I love getting together and hanging out with you. In 8 minutes, I've already had a full lesson.
Dude, stress of life, it feels so good to be talking about music.
Absolutely.
It's so cool that we do this thing. I mean, yes, you represent Vinyl Me Please and you're there, but to shill records. But the thing is that we're talking about music. It feels so good to be able to nerd out on not the stuff that drives sales and market, but the stuff that brings us together, the actual music, man.
Yeah.
And, yeah, Sun Ra, look, expect it. Like I said, Org Music, I can't wait to be getting what they're coming along. I had a sneak peek. There's something coming out. Fuck, I shouldn't be saying that. Okay, I'm not going to say anything specific, but I saw the cover art. There was original Sun Ra cover art that was commissioned for the new record that's coming out. It's going to be a mind blower, dude.
We might need some of that for the Vinyl Me Please store.
Oh, it's going to be
great.
great.
That is going to be something to treasure.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And so much of it is coming out now. The thing is look, if you're going to try to be a completist, forget it. Because there are, I wouldn't be surprised if there's 400 or 500 records, maybe even more type of thing. It's one of those things kind of like Ennio Morricone's career where nobody really knows how many records there were.
Right.
Dude, I feel like I'm completely taking over the conversation. And the fact is, I was far more interested in hearing what you had because you've been doing something that's really cool, or at least you're 2 for 2 over the last 2 months. You've picked a record that was not on my radar, and you sent it to me. And
what were those two records for you so far?
well, this month, in the last box, you sent T.L. Barrett.
Oh yeah.
And I have a lot of that. I have a lot of that kind of like ghetto gospel already. So I wouldn't have picked that because I have a lot of it already. And you basically sent the best, I call it ghetto gospel, but yeah, you sent the best ghetto gospel or the best soul gospel record in my collection, man. That's an amazing record.
I love that. And we owe, I mean, all the credit on resurfacing that record goes to Numero Group. We
Light
just
in
got
the
to
Attic,
go-
actually.
What? Before Numero.
Yeah, Light in the Attic. Light in the Attic released it a bunch of years before, and Numero then released it, and that's what we have now. I was surprised too.
Yeah. I mean, I know, like at least in the Vinyl Me Please universe, it came to us by way of Numero. We thought it sounded amazing and wanted to do this kind of special edition just with a funky colorway. And it is a record that I'm so quick to pull out, like anytime from Sunday morning to like
Anytime.
a dinner party where you want to mix it up and get people talking. It's such a fun record.
Dude, do you have a subwoofer on your system, or like does your bass response really strong?
So I've got like a modern stereo with a real proper REL sub, and yeah, it drops the bass through the floor on a record like this. The stereo I listen to the most is all vintage and JBL like set of studio monitors, but they've got a big 12-inch like single driver.
Yeah.
So the range is decent, but it's not like modern sub kind of depth.
Because, no, what I was trying to say is, well, I mean, the big musician on this is, there's Phil Upchurch on guitar, who's a big Stax guy, a big chess guy. No, he wasn't Stax, it was chess, a big session musician. And the bassist is also a session musician. Dude, pay attention to the bass on that record. It's fucking bananas, man. It's like, that's where it is that you're listening to it, because that's kind of also the reason why I didn't want the record in the first place, because I knew that Mount Sinai Records was this guy's record label. It was a small so I wasn't sure. There's like the minute the guy starts playing bass, it's like, no, this is not some guy who just belongs to a church choir. This is a professional bassist. It's very clear. And lo and behold, you read up on it, and yeah, he's a session musician for Cadet.
But then you got all the great like choir harmonies and stuff that are, I don't know, very organic, less professional.
Yes.
I think that brings just like a cool balance to that record.
I'm not sure if it was in the liner notes, but this was something I did mention. I was talking about T.L. Barrett just last week, but I wanted to mention it because I forgot to mention it last week. Another interesting thing about T.L. Barrett, the pastor who started all of this,
What's that?
He got convicted of fraud for starting 12 different pyramid schemes.
Ooh.
Where he would bilk the churchgoers out of money and offer promissory notes to build the community. And
he was really taking that whole God helps those who helps themselves mantra to heart. Yikes.
It actually goes a little bit further. After all of this happened, he served his time. Okay, he pled guilty. Served his time. After the fact, like maybe 5 years ago or something like this, he was given some kind of medal for his services to the community.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Oh, yeah. Yikes. So that record, besides being sampled by Kanye and all of that, it's thanks, man. That was great. That's a great record, man.
Nice. I'm happy to hear it. Well, we should see if we can't hit a third month in a row. Let's go through our list of what we shopped in this month's store.
Beauty. So, do you want to go first?
You do the honors. I already talked about Sun Ra and what I had to omit. So let's hear a pick from you.
Very good. Okay. I mean, it's what we're seeing on the screen right now, which is Mississippi Fred McDowell, Mississippi Delta Blues. I wasn't sure if I had the record, and it's because The word Mississippi and Fred McDowell gets mixed around with Delta, and there's several variations of the same theme, and they're different records. I don't have this record. It's a 65 session that was recorded by Black Lion. And look, I have this thing when it comes to blues. Once blues kind of got co-opted might be unfair, but once blues got discovered, especially by the British guys, and just kind of like became this rock and roll thing, and the actual blues thing changed also. I stopped calling it blues. Like, for example, I like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but to me, he's not a blues artist. I always saw him more as a rock and roll artist. You know, it's nitpicky stuff that's not important. Okay. But if I were to take that kind of categorization, Mississippi Fred McDowell is one of those quote unquote real blues artists. This guy was discovered by, you remember which record was it that you guys released on Folkways?
Big Bill Brunsey.
Yeah, Big Bill Brunsey.
I think Big Bill's on one of these tracks actually too.
Wouldn't surprise me at all, because all of these musicians were found by the same guy. And for some reason, his name's not coming to me. It's crazy.
Alan Cuomo? He's a producer.
Alan. Lomax.
Lomax?
Yes, sir. It's Alan Lomax. I'm absolutely certain of it. Anyway, he used to go around recording. He was hired by the Library of Congress to record the folk music of every country.
You're right. It is absolutely the guy you're talking about. I was thinking of Alan Bates, who's listed as the producer, did a ton of the production for Black Lion and produced this session.
There you go.
Yes, you are totally right about the collection of all that Americana, and that's what became the Smithsonian catalog, essentially.
Well, actually, it is the Smithsonian catalog. No. Were they hired? The Lomaxes, I believe, were hired by the either the Smithsonian Institute or the Library of Congress.
I think it might have been Smithsonian, but it could have started at Library of Congress, because a lot of those records exist in both places and are like formally labeled as like a part of American history.
Well, that's exactly it.
History.
Right. Yeah. The whole point is let's assume, I mean, in the end, it's just a title, but let's assume it's the Smithsonian. It was the idea of recording an anthropological artifact, and they hired not Bates, but Lomax, to go around worldwide and record this stuff with one of the very first portable recording sets. So you'll notice that a lot of the Lomax recordings don't happen only here. They'll happen in Russia and a whole bunch of other countries. But where it came here, and what he brought to the table, is he went deep into the mountains. He wasn't looking for music, dude. He was looking for anthropology. He was looking for the sounds of the people. So the more remote, the better. And he could do that. He'd tag his son along. He'd tag his son Alan along with him. They'd go, and that's the way they found Fred McDowell. That's the way they found Big Bill Brunsey. A lot of these guys would have died, and there's probably hundreds more that did die without us knowing it. This is mountain music.
Yeah, and you can hear it. I mean, I definitely, a lot of, and I don't have huge depth in blues, but like mine starts more like when that whole like Mississippi and Southern blues starts to migrate to like Chicago, and the sound evolves a little bit.
Yeah, it becomes electrified a little bit. Yeah. Muddy brings it to Chicago.
I first heard this Fred McDowell. It's like it's kind of sounds thin, in a way. Like, I mean, these are like, just stripped down, bare bones instruments, and to hear what he can do with something like believable.
Well, if I'm not wrong, they had a lot of technical difficulties during this session as well. Okay, and this was recorded after the Lomax recordings, but I think there were some technical difficulties. But a lot of the times, if you listen to this, you can literally hear the room. So if the guy's like stomping his foot on the ground, you can hear the boards creak and stuff.
Yeah. So we can go long on this, because I had this on my list as well.
I thought so.
We've been working with Black Lion on a few of these releases, because they just have this. We take an interesting stance on live recordings and session stuff, because you know, it has a little different feel than an album that's
Sure.
been concepted as a complete work of art. But we've been putting out a series of Black Line. So this Fred McDowell's the third. Um, and actually, I don't know if people are into this type of thing. So we did Bud Powell, Fred McDowell this month, and
And
then
Earl Hines.
Earl Hines, that's right. And they're all these really cool sessions. The vinyl pressings came out excellent.
They're amazing.
And we were doing a bundle for these. So, I mean, they're all, I think, $27 and $29. The Bud Powell's 29. Earl Hines, I guess, is like 25, 26. And then this Fred McDowell is 27 bucks. We just put these together as a bundle for 60 bucks
I
in
saw
our
that.
store. So I was considering lumping all of my money into just going big. And I mean, these three records for 60 bucks is like a screaming deal if you're into this kind of these really interesting musicians and some of their best sessions. The Bud Powell like Essence Jazz Festival in Holland, like that session is actually really, really cool for a live recording.
Or
so there's some good stuff.
Yeah, Org's really hit it out of the park, I think, with the Black Line sessions. And I think one of the things, honestly, is that they branded it properly, besides like remastering it and making sure that it sounds the way it's supposed to. But if you look at a lot of the old Black Line records, they kind of look almost like there's not much design. It wasn't a very exciting look. And I found that Org cleaned up the sound, and they really did something by issuing it as cohesive. So if you look at the spines, I wish I had taken them off my shelf. They're directly behind me. I have like 13 Black Lion records, and if you put them together,
Nice.
it's obvious, just like the Impulse, orange and black that you see in the background. You'll notice, you'll immediately catch when you have Org music stuff. So it makes for kind of like that spine porn. Looks really nice on your on your shelves.
Nothing says I'm a deep, deep vinyl nerd like the phrase spine porn.
It's fun, man. Hey, you want it to look nice, right?
You do. It makes a difference.
So you're gonna go now?
Yeah, so we both got Fred McDowell in our carts. I will do a record I've been, waiting to do since we did her self-titled earlier this year, and that's Betty Davis, Nasty Gal.
Very good.
I love this record. I like her whole swagger. I think it's so appropriate, like societally right now and culturally, with so many women just speaking their voice. I think she could be. It's such an interesting thing that she could have been. She was a soundtrack in the '60s, and it's hyper relevant today. And I think the record just rips.
The record does rip. The record's every bit as powerful as the first one. The only reason that I was actually happy that I didn't put it on my list, because then I would have really had a problem. But I have an original. I'm certainly curious. I'm curious to compare an original to the Light in the Attic version you have, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Light in the Attic usually does this stuff right. But yeah, you're getting a great record. Anybody who orders this one won't be disappointed, especially if they already bought They Say I'm Different.
Yeah. Yep. Then you've got like the full collection, and it's just any of those records. My only thing is like trying to figure out which, when I'm in the mood for Betty Davis, I don't have a huge preference of which record from her catalog I grab, which is probably a good thing, but they're all so solid.
Well, it's not like she recorded a whole ton either, eh? Right? There was one more record after this. The name escapes me, and then I think Light in the Attic released some rarities and kind of bits and bobs, but she didn't record too much, and she kind of fell off the face of the earth and just became a complete reclusive person.
I know. I wish she would actually come back into the spotlight. Like I'm saying, with just the tone of the music and kind of her owning her womanness and all that. I think she'd be a person that people would really rally around today. And she's still alive and she's in good health.
That's true.
She lives in Baltimore, but she just, whatever happened, she just took a hard turn away from being a public figure and has no desire to go back.
If did she find Jesus? Was that part of it also? As far as I know, now she's living in an old age home, and people would not guess what her former life was.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Cool.
Because when we did that feature last June or
It
July,
was July, yeah.
we were able to reach out. We spoke with her. We were really trying to get some in-person time to get to interview her and hear first person. She was willing to give us some quotes and was proud. We sent her a stack of the records so she could have for herself and her family. And she was really happy about the project, but just said she didn't want to be involved in a public way.
I guess I can understand that, eh? What winds up happening is that old adage from The Who of "Hope I die before I get old" kind of comes to life, right? Where all of these young, exuberant people whose art is very couched in youth become old, right? And I mean, if we look at Betty Davis now, it's not going to be the same. So maybe, in a way, she's, I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a mystique that's there, and you're just kind of
high energy, sexually charged. Like, it's hard to bring that as whatever, an 86-year-old woman.
Yeah, you can't, right? And it kind of reminds me. I know that she didn't want to have pictures taken either, but it reminds me of the Betty Page story, which was exactly the same thing. Betty Page wouldn't allow herself to be photographed because she didn't want the image. The image was so iconic that she didn't want to taint it.
It makes sense, right? In some ways, I guess that is like a very thoughtful part about just preserving your legacy and your brand, your personal brand or whatever.
Yeah, to me, I think that there's a certain integrity to that as well. I mean, how many artists really do anything that's of value once they reach their, a different age? There are only so many Tom Waits, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Most of them wind up like the Rolling Stones, and I know I'm going to upset some people. But come on, man. The guy's 80 years old. He's still running around,
I know.
So give me number 2, buddy.
Well, so my first two are Fred McDowell and Betty Davis Nasty.
Okay, very good. Oh, so then it's my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. Super Ape returns to conquer the world. Is that what it's called? Returns to conquer. That is, yeah, that one definitely makes my list. Well, number 1, Super Ape is one of the best dub records ever released. So anything attached to that, there was the one that came out after that, which is Return of Super Ape. I have that too, although it wasn't released in a very nice pressing. You guys released the nicest pressing I have, at least, of Super Ape. But Super Ape Returns, or Return of Super Ape, hasn't gotten a proper release, if I'm not wrong. And was it last year or the year before? They celebrated the 25th year anniversary of Super Ape, and Lee Perry went out with exactly the band that he's performing and recording with on this album here, and played Super Ape in its entirety with the band as well. And I got to catch that performance. It was really great. So I kind of know what to expect, but I haven't heard a note of it. And, hats off to Lee Perry, man.
Hell yeah. And one of the things that some of the musical dots that I've been connecting, and my history is very thin, but I didn't realize there was this period where there was a lot of crossover between like Jamaican dub reggae and Ethiopian music.
Oh yeah.
That I don't know geographically how that happened, but
Rastafarianism, dude. Haile Selassie.
Yeah, and a lot of the Ethiopians were adopting a lot of those dub sounds, but then I would have never guessed that it went the other way too. That in this record is credited as sounding a lot more full than the original Super 8 because there's Ethiopian horn sections and stuff in Returns to Conquer. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be really excited to hear what you think when you get it. And does that take away from its kind of dub roots, or is that a different, better, cooler sound?
No. Lee Perry is an alien. Lee Perry can do whatever he wants, and if you don't understand what he does, then it's your problem. because what Lee
right.
Perry does is he speaks Lee Perry language. Whatever he releases is Lee Perry. If you don't like it, it's fine. But I, when it comes to artists like that who have changed music, I mean, listen, the stuff that he did in Black Ark Studio is legendary and genre defining. When you reach that, you lose, to me, from the outside, you lose the right to even fucking critique that art, because these guys are beyond art. These guys are creating a language that is unique to them. You know, you think of a Prince. Prince isn't funk. Prince isn't pop. Prince is Prince.
Yeah.
Lee Perry is Lee Perry, and you don't fuck with it.
Shit. I mean, you've won me over enough that if I was standing in line, I would put something back out of my cart and get this Lee Perry.
Yeah. No, look, there's some artists for me that I really feel that they are a language unto themselves. And I mean, jazz becomes something really easy to point towards, you know, because you can listen to an Ornette Coleman and listen, nobody sounds like Ornette Coleman. That is a language. Albert Ayler is a language. John Coltrane, you know, this stuff is like they created something where you listen to just seconds of it and it's like, oh, that's who we're listening to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had to point to anybody like that in the world of reggae or dub, you know, besides the obvious ones, Lee Perry, there's no doubt about it. You know, you can look at, you know, King Tubby and a whole bunch of them, but this guy is still going on. He's still making music that I think is relevant, and the fact that he's using different elements makes him one of those unique artists that transcends his own age. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like in the Tom Waits kind of category, for me at least.
It's interesting to see people achieve that classic. You defined a genre, you broke down barriers, you really, you know, changed music, and he's still alive and he's still engaged. Like, that part I think is interesting.
Well, yeah, living legend. And the thing is not living legend in the B.B. King sense where, you know, they're kind of propping him up, but living legend in the Buddy Guy sense where this guy is old as fuck and he's still bringing it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. That part is like the part that is like unique to a very small set of people.
So you're gonna go tell Lee Perry's brain's fucking fried on years, a lifetime of drugs. He's created stuff. He's created music that has taken genres to the next level. He gets to say whatever the fuck he wants, because if we don't understand the language, it's our fault.
Exactly. Dude, yeah. I want this record now.
It's for sure, man. You know it's gonna be good. He's like a fucking king amongst men in my world, at least.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was good live, eh? I'm not saying it's gonna be the same thing recorded because I haven't heard a note, but it was really good live.
Nice.
Yeah. Actually, can I give you just one more anecdote?
Yeah.
Just recently, no, maybe less than 5 years ago. Just to kind of give you an idea of how he was a pack rat. People used to send him a whole lot of stuff, and is like a genuinely weird guy. Like stories of, you know, putting fucking tinfoil on his walls or wearing tinfoil. Like he's really like he believes in aliens and all. And anyway, at one point there was a large part of his studio, I think it was Black Ark actually, that was burnt down, so he lost tons of stuff that he's been saving for years. That, you know, people had given and stuff that was kind of like had taken on historical value in dub and reggae circles, and his response was simply, it's just he put out a note and asked people to start sending him more stuff through Twitter or something. I forgot how he did it, but through some kind of social media. It's just, look, my shit got burnt down, send me more. And
people rallied?
Of course.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to send something to Lee Perry? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, dude.
It's one of those times when the internet actually does something good. It's always nice when you hear those stories.
Sure. Give me a pick, buddy.
I'll save my fourth pick is the one I want to convince you of as like a new record exposure. So my third pick, I'll go with something that was pretty new to me. It's a band called Shame. They're like a British kind of angsty post-punk band.
New band?
New band, yep.
Okay.
And this record's called Songs of Praise. It's hard to say if it cuts new ground, but I think this is where I kind of started with this was early this month, whatever, just kind of new year, new habits, was looking for new music that was going to be a little more like driving me.
Sure.
And these guys are really fun, angsty guitar rock, kind of self-loathing. He's got a good voice for kind of punk rock, but he, kind of talks shit on himself throughout the whole record. I'm nothing to look at, and I don't sound that good either. And but I like it. It's got, and again, maybe some of this is like crossover with like political angst I feel these days, and
Fair
just
enough.
wanting that high energy and a little bit of getting pissed.
You know what label it's on?
I don't know what label they're on. I think they're still on a fairly small British imprint, but I don't know the label. The record is solid all the way through, like a lot of like post-punk and punk records, pretty short. The songs, it's hit you hard, melt your face off in 40 minutes and leave.
Well, the fun part about this is that I'm 100% open, and mostly because I'll very openly admit to not knowing a whole lot of post-punk or a lot of anything new. For me, I come from the metal and hardcore, metal and metal derived music. So a lot of the punk that I saw kind of growing up, there was always kind of, when you look at somebody like, I don't know, whatever, Billy Idol or Gen X or that type of thing, I was a metalhead again, right? So that's the only thing I knew. I didn't understand the underground too much. And then, even as music went forward and there was that, what was that big festival? I went to the very first one, the
Roadburn?
No, not
metal or punk?
Punk. All the Epitaph bands used to be on it.
Not like Warped Tour?
Yeah, that's the one, Warped Tour. The Warped Tour. I went to the first one of those and realized it's like, I don't know, man. It's kind of like, it felt poppy to me. It felt very poppy to me.
Yeah, by the time you hit Warped Tour, you've gone from punk to post-punk to pop-punk. I think they needed stuff that, kids could rally behind, but wasn't really all that, like, edgy to start filling up, whatever, skate parks and shit like that for Vans.
So that's my question. Is it that type of a thing? Is it kind of like a Vans punk or?
Nope, a little grittier than that. Like, strip out the pop stuff. And, it's not Kennedy's or, even Billy Idol-ish. It's fuzzier, but I think you're gonna dig it. And I haven't spent a ton of time with it. I probably listened to it full album all the way through 4 or 5 times. But every time, like, I go to take it off the turntable and put it back in the sleeve and like refile it, and I kind of find myself being like, no, I'm just gonna leave it out. I'll probably play this again tomorrow. I don't know. I like records that have that effect where it's like just good enough that it just keeps getting run through. So
they're basically, you're not playing them, they're almost playing you because it's the same record that keep calling out to you. Yeah, yes. I totally get that, actually.
And I think it's a little funny, like cheeky, like the name of the record, Songs of Praise, is because they're like pretty like atheist in their leanings. I can tell from like the language of the lyrics. I haven't read that much about their personal beliefs, but Songs of Praise is the longest running BBC show, and it's like church music on Sundays. So
gotcha.
they like using that as their record name, and then going out and like it's very great.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. What's the name of the band again?
The band's just called Shame.
Shame.
S-H-A-M-E, yeah.
Gotcha.
Like
okay,
the feeling you get. Yeah.
I'll be looking for it. So I guess it's my turn, right?
Yeah.
I got 2 more here. Nils Frahm.
Ooh,
Nils
nice.
Fram's latest one, what's it called? All Melody or just Melody?
I think it's just called Melody.
Yeah, just Melody. Well, you guys are directly responsible for getting me into Nils Fram. I love an artist who can kind of create this otherworldly feeling, and there's a few that have done it, but just they create this certain ethereal energy around their music that uplifts, and it separates them from the pack, because there's not everybody that's able to capture that special type of energy, and I'm thinking of people like Brian Eno with a lot of his ambient works, or I don't know if you're familiar with Arvo Part.
I'm not.
Arvo Part, yeah, man, just this classical guy. I can't even remember what country he's from, but it's just his music just sounds like it's coming straight from heaven, and Nils Fram, what he brings to the piano is a language, a form I've never heard before. It's just that ambient. He brings an ambience. It's not just a question of playing the instrument or composing the actual song in terms of structure, but it's almost like composing the mood, composing everything that's supposed to be around it. He almost puts you. There's a few artists that kind of, if you close your eyes, they can take you to a time or place type of thing. They can take you to different worlds, and you think, of course, of stuff like krautrock for sure. To me, Nils Fram was definitely one of those. And when you guys released Spaces as your album of the month, I knew I didn't need to hear more than one. That one record kind of told me that, this is a guy that, I want to listen to for the rest of my life. And he's one of those discography artists, kind of like you got to collect everything, because everything represents a different aspect to what he does.
Yeah.
So
I love this record. I actually have not listened to Melody all the way through. I've heard one or two singles. I loved Spaces. I think Nils is a genius. I also think there's something about it that's like, he's very brave. Like, I mean, obviously grew up as, a piano prodigy, and he could have taken that in all of the classic paths, but he's got that kind of rock and roll spirit of, like, he really wanted to do something different and not be put in a box because of the instrument that he was so talented with. And I think that part's just way cool. And his career and ascent is all about trying to figure out different ways to bring the piano in. I mean, he does these concerts with 7 pianos and layers and looping, and like, I think that's awesome. And somebody who really pushed, not just to be content that, like, he has the musical gift. He could have sat there and done a very traditional career, probably still been successful. But I think this stuff, it's the inventiveness that makes the music interesting.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly the feeling that I got from Nils Fram as well. The comparative that I make, not musically in terms of the same style or anything, but kind of almost approaches, I almost put him in the same category as somebody like a John Cage, or or these guys who thought, hey, you know what? Let me open up the piano and let me hang a bunch of things to these strings, and we'll call it a prepared piano, and it'll sound different than a regular piano, because every time I hit a key, I'm also hitting this other stuff that's hanging off the strings. And depending on what you put, it'll sound different, So there's that maverick spirit of extending the language. The language and forging something that's your own, that I think, for me, Nils Fram definitely does that. So this can't come soon enough, man.
I like your use of the word language. I never think of language and music, but you said that about Lee Perry and like having his own language, but it's very true. The parallels, and it's almost like putting an accent, like it's still English, but it sounds so different, right? And that is like the parallel for me with language as a word. That's interesting.
It's hard to kind of put it any other way, because, I mean, that's exactly what it is. In order for you to really, in order for anybody to make any lasting impression on art, They have to take what's there and they have to move it forward. You're not necessarily recreating the wheel, but you're creating a stamp, an indelible stamp that people can go out and say, ah, that's you. You know, and at the end, if I play a Nils Fram record, even if I don't hear the other stuff, I'm pretty sure that I'll be able immediately to catch glimpses of the way he does things or his particular lens, you know, the way he approaches music that makes me say, ah, okay, that's Nils Fram, you know.
Yeah.
The artist, you know, that I mentioned as one of the most obvious things is Diamanda Galas. You need to listen to her for 3 seconds and you'll know who she is.
Nice. I need some exposure.
Be careful what you ask for, man. It's
you said she'll take you on a wild ride.
She'll take you on a wild ride. She will absolutely. Her art can fucking sear, can like sear your heart in half. It's crazy. She frightens me. She's absolutely one of the most unique maverick talents in music for me. But
that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm not sure you're going to like it necessarily. That's another thing.
I mean, yeah, liking it and appreciating it, I guess, are two different sides of that coin.
Yeah, well, are you the type of guy that'll go to a restaurant and try the weird stuff like, you know, oh, bull's testicles, I'll try that?
Yeah.
Me too.
I will always try it. And I start to ask myself why at a certain point, because there's, like, I'm always curious to try, and I never feel all that rewarded, but I like the psychic reward of at least having tried it.
What is it about people that makes them look at a bull's testicles and say, you know what? If we boil those things and we put a nice, delicious reduction sauce on it, they might taste really good.
It had to be born out of necessity, right?
Of course.
Like, they can't have come out of like, culinary desire.
Yeah, raccoon dick. Yeah, let's eat that.
You were just damn starving.
No, actually, it's exactly that. It's one of the first lines on a Ray Charles book, his Ray Charles biography. I don't know if you read, if you wrote more than one, but his autobiography, Brother Ray. One of the things, the one thing that I remember from that book is the way he used to describe how he grew up poor, and the way he described is, you know, we'd raise our own animals and we'd everything off the pig except the oink. And yeah, that's, I think, why people started eating bull's testicles.
Yeah, it's got to be. I've tried it, and I actually haven't tried bull. I've tried sheep and like bighorn sheep in Colorado. That's a whole thing. The Rocky Mountain oysters, which are like bighorn sheep balls, and I mean, they're not terrible. They're not gag-inducing, but they're also not very good.
Do they taste like chicken?
No, chicken tastes like chicken, and it's pretty good. And Rocky Mountain oysters, I don't know. They don't taste terrible. They have a mildness, but they don't taste like chicken. That's the thing that people say to tell you it's not going to be terrible, but it doesn't taste like that.
Listen to the shit that we talk about, Hessler.
I know. We're off on
unbelievable.
What kind of balls we're eating over here? What happened to us?
And from there, we go from the art and the etherealism of Nils Fram to your next pick, buddy.
So this is a record I'm going to sell you on if it's the last thing I do. You particularly. This is a band called Kruungbin.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm saying it right. Different people say it different ways. I never know what the cool kid way is to say it. I got hip to these guys since they were on that Bonobo Late Night Tales. And I think that's where like a big point of introduction for a lot of folks. Loved the last record, and it was a thing that was in high rotation for me, and I think it's all the way back to 2015, maybe 2016.
So is it an electronic thing?
No, they're Texans who play I guess it's probably, they certainly are very open about the fact that their music, their largest influence is 60s and 70s Thai funk.
Oh, well then I'm going to love it.
Yeah.
Those cheapo Thai tapes there.
Yes.
Yeah.
They loved all those Thai tapes, but then it kind of mixes with like surf rock vibe, like SoCal thing, but again, all like I think synthesized very cerebrally. Like they weren't part of that Thai funk movement. They're younger. They weren't really part of like 60s like surf rock or like OG surf rock, but these influences and then like their Texasness all comes together in a way that I really dig. Some of it's got vocals, a lot of it's instrumental, a lot of it gets funky and just groovy. It's a cool record to work to. I have not heard the new record as a record. I've heard 2 singles so far,
Yeah.
and I think they're like continuing in a direction that is going to be really good for them. It's not like they didn't go crazy mainstream. In their last record, I mean, it's by no means huge, but they had some commercial success from it. And I didn't know if they were going to try to build more on that. I think one of the members is like a pretty young woman. Like, do you start to play like the starlet and layer in more vocals and make it more, I don't know, commercially viable? But from what I've heard so far, they kept it really pretty funky, and I think for a group of modern musicians, it's got a cool older feel, but looking through kind of like a current lens.
It's funny because as you describe all of that, the band that keeps coming to mind is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing they do, right? They're experts at the mashup, where they take all of these old styles and they fuse it into something that's very much their own. And yeah, man, if they're gonna start digging through that Thai funk stuff or just a lot of that Thai music from the late 60s and early 70s, dude, that stuff is whacked out, man. It's really weird. So I'm not sure that you're gonna have to twist my arm too much to get me to listen to that.
But yeah, that was my 4th pick, and I like that record. It also came in on one of the like cheaper sides, especially for a cool color exclusive. So I was able to round out my picks.
And then that leaves me to my last one. I picked the album for the music, and I'm not sure if I would have maybe picked a cap instead. And that's not necessarily, like, I'm saying this completely blindly without knowing it, but you guys have a copy of John Coltrane Soul Train in the store, and it's a $17 record. And for me, it's that $17 that kind of makes me weary, because, I mean, when you're getting a pressing, when jazz isn't pressed properly, it sounds bad. When classical music or even stuff like, let's say, Nils Frahm, stuff that's like very subtle, that has a lot of subtle passages, if it's not pressed properly, there's no distortion to cover it up. So it winds up being a really unpleasant experience. And I had that with some mono stuff that Rhino released there with John Coltrane. So I'm not sure. I mean, if it sounds great, there's no arguing the album. Okay,
yeah, the album is all-time great.
Yeah, it's absolutely. This was recorded in '58. There's Paul Chambers on bass on this one, and fuck, who else is on it? I forgot who else is on it. But the Prestige during this time, the late '50s mostly, is where all of these huge musicians, they didn't get paid much, but they were all working together, and one guy went to another guy's session. So you'll see a lot of like crossover between Miles Davis and Sonny Rollins and Max Roach and John Coltrane and all of these guys, Thelonious Monk, and that's that period there. Okay, so to kind of place it historically, the year before that, John Coltrane released Blue Train, which again is more traditional, right? This came out the year after, and the year after that, I believe, he released Giant Steps, 59. And Giant Steps is where John Coltrane really starts developing his own language. The Prestige stuff, which is what Soul Train is where they kind of like all played together and they were still figuring it out. They were putting something together, but all of them would eventually break out and do their own thing, right? So Monk did his, Miles Davis signed on with Columbia and wound up, changing history. Same thing with Coltrane, but great record, 40 minutes of excellent jazz. It's just, I don't know what pressing it is, so.
Yeah, and I mean, it's $17. It's not going to be what it should. If you need a definitive version of this record, and nobody would fault you for saying a definitive version is worth having in your collection, go get something that's 2 LP and half speed remastered, and like you said, it'll just breathe. But I think for us it was like an easy thing to put in the store where we have a lot of young
Sure.
collectors and people that are, they're trying to get from 30 records to 40 records in their collection, and this is a great way to do that at 17 bucks
There's
to
no doubt
own
about it.
like a crazy legendary record. So yeah, I'm super happy when we have some of these accessible titles. I like doing having the nice ones, but we had that Nina Simone, that original, like Nina Simone's first release record in the store last month, but I mean, it was 200 gram and a 2 LP and all that stuff. $67 for a single record, though.
Yeah.
You're like, yikes! Like, it's worth owning if you're in the income bracket. But
No,
like,
I got you.
yeah, I think it's important to keep a mix there and make sure music stays accessible.
And yeah, that's exactly it. I think that the $20 record to me, or the below $20 record, is absolutely important. And if you start getting too hung up on the pressing and that type of thing, maybe you're missing the entire point. To me, the idea of a 22-year-old kid picking Soul Train along with his copy of Moby and along with his copy of De La Soul Balloon Mind State, that's a pretty cool,
Yeah.
If I see that as the final bill, it's like, this kid's got a pretty cool collection, man. He just picked up 3 cool records.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's important, obviously, always for us
Sure.
to keep a genre mix and a price mix. And, we want to do some of the really special stuff, but I always worry that, we're collectors and we're working in the business, and like you get too fixated on the big box sets and like, oh, it's a mono box and that stuff. They are grail things to try to own, but it's not where everybody needs to start their vinyl collecting.
Well, you don't have another one. We've reached the end, eh?
We've reached the end.
You know what I'm going to do before we say bye-bye? I'm just going to let you know, we'll close this off just by letting you know that every time you move on your end, there's this noise that you're making. Do you know SOD? Do you know the Stormtroopers of Death?
No.
Oh, fuck. There's one song called What's That Noise? You sound like that song, What's That Noise? And I know you well enough to know that when you listen to this, it's going to make you completely mental that you made as much noise as you did.
Damn it.
But you told good stories, and that's another hour we spent together that was great, Hessler.
I enjoyed the hell out of it, man. I always do. And yeah, the busier life gets, the more I look forward to being able to shoot the shit about music. And now I got to go learn a ton about Sun Ra. I got to get a Lee Scratch Perry record. Sure. This is already like kind of built my desire on a few things.
Well, look, it's been a blast. The Vinyl Me Please store opened last Wednesday, correct?
Correct.
Awesomeness. So I think
all this stuff, I mean, I'd have to look through. I think some of the stuff, I think that Sun Ra might have sold out. Most of the stuff we've talked about today, I mean, it's in the store. That bundle we just put up for everybody.
The Black Lion bundle.
And learning more about the Black Lion stuff, there is probably no better deal on the internet right now.
Oh, I know.
3 records for $60. So yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. I hope people dig it and let us know what they would put in their cart.
And it's actually, if you're not going to go, if you're going to allow yourself to go a little bit off the beaten path, it should be said that Org bundle, the Black Lion bundle, is a really good starting kit.
Yeah.
Like all 3 records represent a pretty interesting period, and Black Lion's an interesting catalog, man. A very, very interesting catalog, because it's a little bit all over the place. And I know that I have them. If I didn't have them, I'd be picking that up immediately. So I kind of understand the urge to kind of like blow 60% of your $100 budget just on those 3 immediately,
And I'm in the worst spot because I have got Fred McDowell coming, and I already got the Bud Powell.
Sure.
And so now, like, I have to pay full boat for the Earl Hines because it doesn't make sense to get all 3.
Oh, yeah. Well, Hessler, we're done. We're going to say goodbye. And next month, we do it all over again, right?
You sure as hell will.
You're the best, buddy. That was fun, man.
You got it. It was great. Thanks for having me.